Okay guys, so today's video is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be more of an information and awareness video. So I've got James Ryder with me here, and James is a farmer just west of Toowoomba who's had quite a few dealings with weapons licensing and the QCAT process with regards to suppressors. So we're going to talk about that and put a little bit of information out there and get a lot of you shooters on board with what we think the direction of suppressors and their use should be here in Queensland. So first of all, mate, look, thanks for your time. Appreciate everything.
Thank you very much, Ozzie. Thanks for coming along.
And I'm glad I was able to bring the rain up for you.
That's right, it was excellent.
We just had a heap of rain when we first started the camera before, so yeah, it was quite funny. So this is take number 2, but anyhow. So James, where we'll start off with, mate, if we can, is your property here. What's the size and what's its use? What are you growing here?
Yep, we've 2,300 acres of dry land, zero-till cropping country, mainly summer crops here, sorghum, mung beans, maybe cotton sometimes, and a couple of winter crop rotations as in wheat and chickpeas.
Yep, yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I look around here, geez, it's flat country, like, you know, compared to where I am, I've got fairly hilly and flat country. But here, just as far as I can see, there's just virtually nothing, you know, very flat country. So what about from a feral pest point of view? What do you suffer with as a farmer up here with regards to feral pests?
Look, Ozzie, I suppose our two biggest problems are probably, and mainly in terms of damage to native wildlife that we have on the farm, is foxes and feral cats. A seasonal issue, depending on the year too, can be feral pigs. Yep. Normally crop damage exclusively with them, but yeah, sometimes you can have quite bad issues with pigs.
Yeah, yep. No, they do cause a lot of damage, that's for sure. So, so your duties, obviously, when you're out on the tractor and so forth, you know, would involve pest control while you're going along, because I'd imagine a lot of your time as you're going along over crops, that's when you start seeing feral pests scatter and amongst the crops, is that right?
That's right, yeah. Typically you won't ever spot pests on the farm unless you're in the paddock with high stubble loads and zero-till farming. Yep. You're typically doing a spraying or a planting, harvesting operation is typically when you'll see feral pests, and that's mainly foxes and cats too. And it's basically a case of you know, going gradually across the paddock, and that sort of musters them, or you'll eventually come across them that way. Whereas otherwise they're typically very hard to find. Yeah,
yeah. So what do you use mainly? What's your go-to rifle and calibre to control feral pests?
Oh, look, typically just a sporter weight 223 rifle. Yep. Something that's easy enough to carry, not too big because they're only a lightly built pest. Yeah. Yeah, that's and not too noisy.
Yeah. It's still got a bit of blast there, 223. It's moving pretty quick. So, okay, so now we've got a bit of a background, mate. How did you actually get on to the point where you've gone, okay, I need a suppressor as a farmer, and I want to put in an application for an exemption here in Queensland to get one?
Yeah, look, Ozzie, about 2 years ago, we just over concerns about hearing loss. I'm probably suffering a little bit of hearing loss and tinnitus, like a lot of farmers and or recreational shooters are. I decided to get as part of a farm workplace health and safety review. A local Toowoomba company included firearm use in the statement, in the farm's policy, and out of that basically came the recommendation that to qualify with workplace health and safety laws, a suppressor was a far more effective method, control method, than actually earplugs or earmuffs in the circumstances I've been using a firearm.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're going to cut to a bit of footage here about, you know, just showing sort of, you know, the tractor and your use with the firearm. But can you sort of walk us through, like, what are the problems you've found when you're in the cab of a tractor out in the field, and how does the suppressor make that better?
Oh, look, I think the number one benefit easily, apart from the obvious one being protection of your hearing, is the actual ease and speed that you can actually enable yourself, get a firearm, and actually take a shot at a pest animal.
Yep.
If you actually have to put earmuffs on or earplugs as well,
Yep.
Just the time lag means the pest typically escapes.
Yeah. So when you're obviously fitting muffs on or plugs or something like that, well, there's a time lapse there, even if it is a few seconds. I mean, and I can confidently say from the 8 odd years I've been doing federal pest control, you really only have a couple of seconds to take a pest at times, and it means whether it escapes, breeds up for the next season, or you actually successful and you get it and then you stop it from there. So I'd imagine too, like with your shooting here, like you're going to get a fair bit of bounce back, I'd imagine, from the blast from a 223 even off the side of the cab. Yeah.
Well, that's the other major issue with workplace health and safety guidelines, is the fact that the confined space amplifies the sound.
Yep.
And also, typically, as a farmer or anyone in some type of workplace, you'd have a full exposure to a recommended amount of noise exposure for the day already.
Yep.
And then you've added a high intensity blast on top of that.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay, so if you can walk us through now, what happened then? Like, did you phone weapons licensing first and make some inquiries after you had all your relevant sort of, background data together to show that, it was definitely lacking under workplace health and safety? Or how did you then come to putting the application in?
I think it was a little bit of research through licensing requirements and what's in the actual Weapons Act.
Yep.
And the only opening for applying for a suppressor, even given a genuine reason, seemed to be the exemption angle. Yeah,
because for people who don't know at home who are watching this, currently in Queensland, it's Category R. So, other Category R weapons are full auto firearms.
Bazookas, landmines,
artillery, like we're talking really heavy grade stuff. And other people around the world will probably even be laughing, especially if they're from the UK or New Zealand, where they can just go in and freely obtain them.
That's right. Seems to be a lot of fuss about a simple item that in New Zealand you can be a 12-year-old child and purchase a suppressor over the counter of a sporting goods store.
Yeah.
It's and the same thing being with if my farm had been situated 150 kilometres further south over the border in New South Wales,
different story.
That's right. There's quite simple access to suppressor permits. And it would have been a simple case of applying and being granted a permit.
Yeah, even as a feral pest controller, I mean, I suffered that frustration as well, because I had different areas where I was invited to come on and shoot, and I had to knock them back. I just say, well, look, I just don't think it's going to work, because it's with the different firearms I was using and not being able to use a suppressor, I could see that it wasn't going to work, and there was a sheer lacking there in my view. And what made that even more difficult was when I heard about fellow feral pest controllers over the border in New South Wales just freely being able to apply, utilise them and conduct their business. It's just really frustrating. So what happened once you put in the application, for an exemption? How'd all that go?
Oh, look, quite simply, probably a month later, I received a refusal in the mail from Weapons Licensing, and detailing the reasons why, and the last page of the refusal stating that I had a right of review.
Yep.
And that's under the QCAT tribunal system in Queensland.
Yep.
It was actually stated that I could actually appeal to that tribunal.
So what was their general reason for saying no, they're not going to give you the exemption, the weapons licensing, that is? Oh,
it was honestly, it was a little bit too. It was just a generic refusal. I think that didn't really state any rebuttal of the genuine reasons I stated. It basically just stated the Act says it's a Category R weapon and it's not allowed.
Yep, okay. Right, okay, so then from there obviously you elected for it to go to QCAT, and how'd that go for you?
Well, good and bad. Yep. Prepared evidence and organised a solicitor and a witness, and the hearing went well. I think the member was fair.
Yeah.
Listened to the reasons, genuine reasons.
It was in your favour, like the first time you went to QCAT? Yeah?
Yeah, that's right. The outcome was a good result. Basically, the member putting himself in the shoes of the decision maker.
Yep.
Said that I had genuine reason to own and use a suppressor, and that it had to be sent back to weapons licensing to be reconsidered and conditions put on it.
Okay, so that sounds obviously really positive and good for you. So then when did it take a negative turn, I guess you could say?
Look, that decision handed down by the tribunal was then appealed by weapons licensing on the basis of QCAT of the tribunal not having jurisdiction to actually make a decision in this case.
Okay.
In particular, due to the fact that it's an exemption, not a licence.
Right, okay, yeah. So where did that then place you?
In the unfortunate position of being needing to continue a legal battle, basically, because once you're in that deep, you can't get out. You've got to actually go to the next level.
Yep.
The result from the second appeal was a negative, saying that the tribunal did not have jurisdiction to actually rule on it. So, unfortunately, the first decision stating in my favour was set aside.
Right, okay, yeah, that is very disappointing. So what is the option for you now? I mean, obviously the option is don't do anything further and just, not pursue anything, or do you have another legal avenue that you can now pursue?
Oh, look, I think there's always other avenues, and hopefully, common sense will hopefully one day prevail, because it's left me in an interesting position where I know a farm business is operating outside of either workplace health and safety laws and or biosecurity laws by not controlling pests.
Yep.
There is the option for me to lodge another exemption application.
So if that then gets knocked back, obviously you then can't go to QCAT because, from my understanding, what you're saying, they don't have jurisdiction there. So if they then knock back a further application, do you have an appeal in court to pursue?
Well, that's right. Unfortunately, Ozzie, because we've actually, if the original refusal had actually stated I didn't have an option to go to QCAT, well, I wouldn't have.
Right.
You would have known you either had the option of going to the Court of Appeal, or you had to accept the decision.
Yeah.
As it is, I've ended up in a position where it's been quite costly to have no decision made.
Yep. So what, if you don't mind me asking, what's it roughly cost you so far pursuing this?
Oh, look, I suppose excluding my time and any other costs, just direct costs involved in solicitors and witnesses, probably just under 30,000.
Yeah, that's my personal view with it. That's just absolutely ridiculous, just to be able to use a device which, at the end of the day, by itself can't hurt anyone. It can't do anything. It's not a firearm. It's just basically a muffler for a firearm.
Yeah,
that's all it is. And I mean, look, if people who here in Australia may have never used a suppressor, and I know from being overseas and having used suppressors, it doesn't completely disguise the shot, like we see in Hollywood movies. It's nothing like that. All it does is reduce that blast. You've still got that supersonic crack if you're using high velocity ammunition. You can't, avoid physics, but it's just something to lower that blast, to make things a lot more comfortable, and as you say, also adhere to workplace health and safety. So, that is, it's just disappointing to hear that as a shooter, mate. I'm just sorry it's cost you that much, and and gone down that track. So would you be looking now at possibly putting in another application? I mean, and this is why the reason why I'm doing this video is, if there was people to help support you, and what I'm saying is other shooters out there who can donate and help, would you look at putting in another application, possibly having it refused and then going to the Court of Appeal?
Well, I think, Ozzie, at this stage, it hasn't always just been about me. I think it's something that it's been an issue over generations for farmers and recreational shooters losing their hearing, regardless of whether they typically wear hearing protection or not. There's still issues with absorption through the bones of your skull from the actual blast energy. I think it's just a case of I'll keep going until I see a fair result.
No, that's probably I imagine a fair and reasonable way to look at it.
I think it's a benefit to farmers first and foremost, because you've only got to look through some of the figures of hearing loss amongst young farmers, and I don't particularly want that legacy to continue.
No, definitely not. So, all right, mate, is there anything else you wanted to add with this, or you feel that we've pretty much covered everything with regards to what happened with your case and any other sort of arguments or even just awareness while we're here that we can put out to just different shooters who may be in the same position? Would you encourage people to also apply?
Oh, look, I think so. Anyone with a genuine reason, and there's plenty of people out there that have. I think we're looking at moving forward and hopefully have a group of like-minded people that'll actually band together to actually get something changed.
Okay then. All right, guys, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to speak with Graham Park, President of Shooters Union, about this. So we'll bring him in and we'll continue with this review. All right, guys, so we've got Graham Park here, President of Shooters Union, a long-time friend of Ozzie Reviews. Thank you very much, Graham, for joining us with all this.
Thanks for having us, Ozzie.
So we've been run through basically the trials and tribulations of James throughout this whole process. Look, I believe Shooters Union had a strong involvement with this. Can you explain to us what Shooters Union involvement was with this, how you assisted with it, and where you would like to see it go in the future?
Well, Ozzie, as you know, Shooters Union's out there to represent the interests of all legitimate firearms owners, and primary producers, farmers, are certainly a big part of that. So when a member, James, came to us and explained what was going on with his suppressor application, we offered to get involved and help with some of the legal expenses, and so we jumped in on that and helped out with that and perhaps a little bit of logistical support. And now, as it goes forward, we want to really help James and other people around the state who have a legitimate use for a suppressor, so that we can move the goalposts forward and get this change so it's fair. It's ridiculous, as James said, that he can go 150 k's south and he'd just be bolting a suppressor on in about 4 or 5 weeks.
It does my head in when you look at the different laws there and on the virtually the same patch of dirt, which is Australia. So
a suppressor is not a firearm, as you stated. It's a muffler. It's no different than a car muffler. Car mufflers are mandated. We can get a ticket for driving down the road without one. And in many European countries, Scandinavia, the United Kingdom, just close by in New Zealand, there are many ranges and different areas you cannot shoot on without suppressors. They don't silence things, as you've already covered.
Well, it's almost enabling in some parts of Europe, especially where I've been in the past. If you go to remove the suppressor, people will look at you strangely and go, what are you doing? Why would you want to remove it?
It's considered rude.
That's right.
It's like some shooting ranges here, people don't like it if you have a muzzle brake on a gun. In fact, some ranges ban muzzle brakes. Why? Because they make the gun sound louder at the point of shot, rather than a moderator sounding less. And it's considered rude. And so it really is. It's enablingness. That's a good way of putting it.
Exactly. So where would you like to see this go forward? Obviously, you would like to be able to see people who are licensed to be able to apply and use, suppressors. So what can we do to assist with that? How can we assist Shooters Union overall to make that happen, or our best chance of making it happen?
What we want to do is obviously assist James, but assist the cause. As James said, it's bigger than him, but assist this cause of fairness to being able to have people have tools of trade and have the best workplace health and safety equipment they can have, What we see is this: we know whether there is a significant number of Queensland farmers, primary producers, who are ready right now to submit applications for a suppressor exemption.
Yep.
And we want to work with those people, and anyone else seeing this video, if you're a primary producer or a pest controller that would have a legitimate use at the moment for a suppressor in your occupational use, please send us an email, and if you're willing to submit, and we'll get you together with that group and we'll give you hopefully some direction. That email will just be legal@shootersunion.com.au, and just send it in and we'll get it to the right people. So we'd like people who are in that position like James to come together, because we believe that seeing the numbers will help influence the situation, because there is some very simple fixes. If they're motivated, the government could do, or the police service could do one of two things. They could either change the category where a suppressor is placed, and in James's QCAT hearing, the last paragraph of the ruling, if anyone wants to read the actual ruling, it says, QCAT itself said they don't understand why a suppressor is in Category R along with bazookas and machine guns. It doesn't do anything. It's a muffler. So there's that side. There's also the other way that they're currently a Category R, and people say, well, they can't issue a Category R licence. Well, they can, because they issue them all the time to collectors, and they limit that. A collector will get a Category R licence, and it will say that it is limited to a deactivated firearm. So they can't go buy a bazooka or something. They can do exactly the same as a matter of policy, simply turn around and say, well, we're issuing a Category R licence with that is limited to only the use of a suppressor for this use. Which is pretty much how New South Wales does it. New South Wales, they're considered a prohibited weapon, so it's effectively done in very much the same way by an exemption almost. They use different linguistics, but it's really the same. So we want to get that group of people together. Secondarily, we've started a legal defence fund, not just for James, but it will be only for these cases to develop this cause. And if people want to throw $20 in or whatever, I'm sure you'll share the details, but that money will not go into general revenue. It will just be specifically for legal defence to shift this issue forward. And whether we have a win with James's case or another case, it's an issue really of fairness and common sense. This is not something that needs to be a hyped up issue. It's not something, New South Wales as an example, when they were changing theirs, looked at criminal gang type shootings in New South Wales over the past 20 years. They couldn't find one use of a suppressor. And as people may realise by looking at YouTube videos, suppressors are very low tech. They're very easy to make illegally. Now, you should never do that, but what the point being is that they're so easy to make illegally that if criminals had a lot of use for them, they'd be using them all the time. And it's just really about workplace health and safety and about being neighbourly and everything else. I see it as a fairness issue, really.
And not to mention the fact that suppressors in general, I mean, they're not 2 or 3 inches in length. There's a considerable length with them, depending on which calibre you're applying.
The average suppressor on a centrefire rifle is going to add 300 millimetres to the end of that firearm. So it's going to be this long, and it's going to be about probably close to 50 mil, 2 inches across. I don't know that there's not many things you'd want to add that bulk to.
Especially if you're trying to conceal a firearm as a criminal.
Which is doubling the length on a handgun effectively if someone were to illegally put one there. So it's nonsensical, and that's why jurisdictions that have much harsher gun laws than Australia, like the United Kingdom, still, you can just walk into any gun shop in the United Kingdom and 60-70% of the guns on the rack already fitted with a suppressor. And if they're not, you can buy one out of the case and walk out with it 5 minutes later. It's a non-issue in everywhere that's had them.
I do think personally that my view on it has always been, as a lot of people have spoken about, it's the Hollywood movies and the whole stigma that the only person that could possibly want a suppressor would be an assassin.
Yeah.
You know, which obviously couldn't be further from the truth, as we've seen here, you know, today with James, myself with the feral pest control. You know, there's just so many practical uses of it, not to mention the fact that the biggest thing, which is workplace health and safety, protecting people's hearing, because once that goes, you can't get it back.
No, and that's a real issue. And I know in James's case, in his family, his own father has literally suffered severe hearing loss from this.
Yep.
And there's many farming families where anyone that gets to a certain age, you know, they're always, what's that? What's that?
Yeah, that's right.
And it seems like a non-issue, and yet some people want to make it very emotive and scream about it like silencers. Well, they don't silence anything, so that's an incorrect name. To give someone an example, Ozzie, if you took a very common caliber like a 243 or 308 and put a suppressor on it, you will bring the sound level back to what some shooter might know around the level of about a 22 Magnum.
Yep.
That's about it. It's still a loud noise.
Yep.
It just doesn't have that incredible blast that does severe damage to you. You still should wear hearing protection, but what you're going to do with the combination is reduce the damage to virtually nothing, which hearing protection on its own can't do, and even that can't bring it back to a safe workplace health and safety level. Yeah,
definitely. Well guys, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the links to the appropriate things underneath this review on YouTube. So in other words, I'll have the link to the QCAT case that James originally went to court on, so you can have a look at the particulars there, because it is actually quite interesting to have a read through it. And obviously we're going to have the link there to the Shooters Union, you know, with their legal defence fund there as well. So, you know, guys, look, I've been involved with the Shooters Union for a couple of years now, and, you know, I've been very happy with what they've done in the sense of getting out there and getting involved. You know, there's really not much they haven't been involved with. So I know some people at times, you know, you'll always get people who will grumble, but overall, and I can honestly say this, I'm very happy with what Shooters Union have done, and hence why I support it. It's as simple as that, Graham. So what I'm asking for the viewers out there is please have a look at these links, and please, if you can, support the Shooters Union. Help them out, and let's try to help people like James, who are legitimate people, who in my view definitely need to have suppressors. And it's not just on the suppressor front, I should say. I mean, we've got fights on our hands, haven't we, with regards to Cat H for farmers. That's another strong thing here in Queensland. And yeah, the more shooters get behind an organisation like Shooters Union, then we can only expand and fight it on more fronts. Correct?
Thank you.
That's my view. So guys, so thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed having a look at this review. As I said, it's a bit more of an information review, but we need your help and we need to stick together as shooters. So please have a look at the links below, and we'll catch you on the next review. So thanks again, Graham, for your time.
Thanks, Ozzie.